basketball players all the time. You know, they're young people, they make millions and millions and millions of dollars, and they retire, and they realize, oh crap, my gravy train's over, and I got 3 ex-wives, and they ain't cheap. Next thing you know, they turned Anton Walker, perfect case example, you know, Kentucky Wildcat, made over $86 million playing basketball in his working world, and now he's worth about 350 grand. And he looks like he's had about 600 Big Macs a week. Anyway, so the chances of him playing ball anymore are pretty slim. But the point is that now he's in a percentage of time, he has to work. And so he's been an analyst for ESPN, the Ocho, or whatever it is. He's not very good. So I don't know what he's going to have to do next. But the idea is that anyone can retire tomorrow. The question is, can we stay retired? We can if we have income. We can with income. So the whole point about income is that this is kind of a big deal. Because what happens, what would have happened if we had retired in January of this year, and we had $1 million, we were going to pull out 4% a year, 4% roll, blah, 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 blah. And all of a sudden, February and March happened to us, and we got real flipping nervous. Because we saw the million go down to 680,000, and we know we're pulling money out. The question is, that emotion that Jack Bogle said can screw us, would we have had the fortitude to go, oh crap, I'm sure this is going to be okay, and stick with it, or would we maybe do something dumb? Yeah? So that's the whole point. How can we derive income without doing that? Because that is what causes people to blow it up. Yeah? That's the big deal. When you look at pension fund managers, some of the most important people on the planet are pension fund managers. And how many pensions are currently unfunded or not funded? It is really hard. It is really hard to have money last correctly. To build money, frankly, chimpanzees with darts proved that they could beat the market in the 80s. Frankly, during this last 13 years, chimpanzees with darts could have probably beaten most mutual funds too. But the question is that how do they make it last when you're pulling money out? And the longer we live, there's more real risks. Longevity risk is the risk of outliving your money, which simply means the longer we live, the more all of these other risks actually could happen, right? If we retire at 65 and we die at 69, there's only 4 years. Yes, things could have been bad, but there's only 4 years of concerns. We retire at 65 and we die at 95, that's 30 years of really weird stuff that can happen, right? There's some crap that's going on right now I never thought I would see. And I figure I'm going to see a bunch of crazy stuff over the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Okay? It's already happened. So how crazy is the next stuff going to be? I'm not going to get into it. You know there's a checkbox on things now that says, what were you, male, female? I have no idea. I'm just saying, there's some things that I didn't think I would ever see. Anyway. So longevity risk, inflation risk. This is going to be the big one. This is going to be the big one if we keep printing money. If we keep printing money, this is going to be a huge one. Inflation risk has happened to every major company that plays with currency fires. And we're doing that right now. Okay? Our Fed, they're not stupid. But Paul Volcker nearly destroyed the country back in the 80s when he did not act swiftly. Now, the problem I think they're doing now is kind of like medicine. You know, right now we're combating COVID, right? We need medicine to fight the illness. But if we get too much medicine, we will kill ourselves with too much medicine. So I'm feeling right now that that's going to be the issue with what we're doing with monetary policy. We're getting to the point where if we keep printing this cash, we're spiking the punch bowl. And at one point in time, when there's no booze left, that hangover is going to potentially be a long one. Okay? And so that's kind of one of the issues. Inflation means that what happens if that does transpire? Well, that can destroy anyone's retirement. Doesn't matter how much money you save. Inflation's high and the market's not performing. It doesn't matter how much you save. If the cost of milk is growing 18% a year, and our funds or our CDs are only growing by 2 or 3% a year, you know, it's only a matter of time before it all goes away. Okay? So that's a big deal. Market risk, well, we already know about that. You know, there's a lot of volatility. You know, tax risk, we hit the heck out of that earlier. It's going to be a really big deal going forward. Healthcare risk, you know, that's probably, as we age, you know, I'm in my mid-40s now, and I see the doctor 4 or 5 times a year. I used to see him once every 4 or 5 years. That was if I had a broken thumb playing baseball. You know? So as we age, there's more of those issues going on, and it's not always free, right? Those issues. Relationship risk, basically, if you were married and you had a double income family and all of a sudden you lose someone and now you don't have that situation, you know, two people can live about as cheaply as one. So if you're only, you know, if it's one person with one income, that can make a major concern. On top of that, and people don't necessarily think about this as much, if you're married filing jointly, you get a preferred tax treatment. If all of a sudden someone passes away, now you have also potentially less income, even if you just lose Social Security. You still have the same costs of having that home, even if you downsize. And on top of that, you have a repressive tax environment because you're filing for one. You don't get the same breaks. So those things can happen if we don't understand how we can need to plan around these things long term. And then sudden changes, which kind of go into it. So Jack Bogle, who I talked about in the beginning, he just passed away in January of last year. He was 91 years old. But Jack Bogle said it's a really unfortunate thing that most people, when they're talking about the market, you know, they talk about risk, they talk about all these things. He said the real bad part is that most people have no idea what the real risk is, the dirty secret. And so he said it's a dirty little secret that the greatest risk that retirees will likely face is almost never talked about. Does anyone know what he was referring to? Sequence of returns. Okay? So no matter what I teach you, no matter what class you go to, I ended up going to Cornell in the end, specifically to study behavioral finance regarding asset distribution, specifically why I went. Dave Collin, which is my professor, is probably one of the smartest people on the planet about understanding behavioral economic cycles and distribution plan. How do we pull money out? How do we not let our head and our gut jack stuff up? And this is something that we've proven we can't do anything about. No matter how wise we are, no matter what we know, this is something we can't fix. The sequence of return basically boils down to this. If you don't study retirement planning or compound interest, and you ask anyone out there, hey, if you earn 8% a year, and you only pull out 5% a year, can you ever run out of money? And when you just think about that simple question, hold on, I'm making 8, I'm only pulling out 5, no, it's impossible to run out of money. Unfortunately, it does matter if there's any volatility with the returns that we receive. And so that's what Jack Bogle was aware of, and it's basically sequence of returns. So I'm going to prove the point that I was making earlier, why pension fund managers are some of the smartest people in every room they're in. Because making money is not necessarily that complex. I know for many of us it seems like, well, hell, what's the hard part? Not even remotely compared to having it last when you're distributing. And I'm going to prove it. So here's the whole point about sequence of returns. How many of us have heard, hey, it's okay if you lose money because it'll come back in the long run, right? You've heard that. It's like, it's just about keeping the money in the market, buy and hold, let it rip. So we're going to use that exact analogy in two situations. Right here, we get two couples. The couple over here, they both start off with $100,000, okay? And over time, they're just going to grow that money. Now, the couple over here, they start off really ugly. The first 3 years, they just take Mike Tyson punches. Down 12%. Next year, down 21. Next year, down 14. Kind of like the dot-com bust, right? 2000, 2001, 2002. They started off at exactly the wrong period of time. Unfortunately. But they kept it in, and they kept it in, and they kept it in, and they ended up getting an 8% rate of return. They grew their $100,000, even though it was low as 59 grand at one point. They kept it in, and they averaged 8, and they ended up with $600 and roughly $85,000. Okay? Couple B, they lucked out. They just put their money in, and they started off in a year when things were just good. Just worked out for them. Okay? So the first 3 years, they're up 29, then up 18, and up 25. Whew, that's a big difference, right? Where their couple over here only had 60 grand, they had 189,000. But long term, it goes up and down, they only average 8%. But they started off so much higher, how much money do you think they have in the end? The same exact $685,000 roughly. So what we just proved is while we're growing money, it does not matter the sequence of returns we get. The average is all that matters when we're accumulating. And this is what everyone deals with until they retire. Which is why I tell everyone all the time, hey, you might be a Wall Street genius. The minute you retire, the math changes on you. Because now we're going to do the exact same situation. They both now, at age 66, have $685,000 roughly. But we're doing the exact same exercise. In the beginning over here, this couple, man, it sucks. They just keep doing everything at the wrong time. And when they start pulling the money out, we have losses to begin with. The sequence of returns were not favorable for them. And so unfortunately, that $685,000, by the time that they're 70, only 4 or 5 years later, it's only worth $348,000. Okay? Now psychologically, what do we do as human beings if all of a sudden we had $685,000? We're only living on 5% a year. I mean, it's not like we're pulling out 10%. We're kind of following the guidelines we've kind of been told to be okay. 685 is now 385. And it's only been 5 years. We're only 70. That's young. 70 is not old in this day and age. And so we look at that and are we potentially going to make major disastrous choices? Maybe. Depends on how we're wired. But an average bear, they're probably going to make changes. In that situation though, because they started off with those losses, the sequence of returns was not favorable for them. Even though long term they averaged 8% on the money, they still ran out. By the time they were 81, they had exhausted all of their money. They still made 8%. But when they made those returns, the sequence, starting off with negatives, was detrimental to them actually succeeding. Over here, the other couple just lucked out. They just lucked out. It's like they retired in 2009 and they retired in 2000. Since 2009, pretty much every year's been positive. The market's up 326%. Because the 2008 debacle was behind us. Since then, through the roof. But if we started off at 2000, we lost 56%, 2000, 2001, 2002. By the time we got really close to back in 2007, 2008 happened. We still didn't pull money out, they ran out. So, but over here, not only by the time that this couple ran out, just because they were unfortunate, they retired in the wrong year and didn't know it, instead of having run out of money, their $685,000 was worth $3.3 million. And they've been pulling out 5% a year the entire time. Talk about a kick in the face. They had the exact same fund paying 8%. They just retired in a different year. So here's the question. What year did you guys retire? What year are you going to retire? We have no idea. Doesn't matter who wins presidency. Doesn't matter what tax rates do. There is no way to know with any certainty how this is going to pan out for us. So this is proof that what we did, and we're maybe dumb and fortunate enough when we were young and making money, is completely different when we actually need to pull the money out. We have no choice. We have no ability to control the years that the punches happen to us. It happens early on, and where are we right now? Maybe in the beginning of it could be a 2 or 3 or 4 year punch cycle, where the market doesn't have to go straight down, but what if we just have an 8 or 9% loss this year? I don't know. Next year, another 9 or 10% loss. Next year, 2 or 3. Then we go up for a couple of years, and then we keep getting punched. Is that potentially going to have us run out, even though we average 8% and only pull out 5? Yeah. So this is the very unfortunate part about finances, and this is the dirty secret. Making money is not all that difficult compared to pulling it out. Because there's nothing we can do, even if we average 8%. The only thing we can do is if we had a linear assumption. If we had something that come hell or high water was just going to pay us that 8% a year, right? Does anyone know what that is? There isn't anything. Not right now. It used to be, and remember in 1999, 2000, I could not give away AT&T bonds that were fully secured by Ma Bell, paying 13.5%. 3-year-old, fully secured, 13.5%, trading at 70 cents on the dollar. Could not give them away to people in 1999. Why? Because their Putnam fund was at 54% the year prior. Of course, 2000, 2001, 2002 happened, and they're like, damn, what are those AT&T bonds? Now, unfortunately, there's nothing that's paying those kind of attractive, not even that much, but 5 or 6. Nothing's really paying that with a comfortable amount of risk factor. So there's really not too many places to hide right now, remember? Stocks are at all-time highs, bonds, because interest rates are lower at all-time highs, and gold is at all-time highs. Not quite all-time highs for gold. They're really darn high. Okay, where do we hide? It's hard to know. So that's why this is a big deal. That's why Jack Bogle said it's a shame because no one, no advisor, no genius, no Wharton professor can figure it out. Because we have no choice. We don't know. Don't know what's going to happen. And this is that whole idea. If we start off with losses, or we're still pulling money out, we just, over time, exhaust the funds. That's going to happen to any one of us, even if we get an 8% return and only pull out 5. That's kind of that dirty little piece of puzzle. And here's the reason why. And if you've had one of my classes before, you know. If you lose 20% of your money and you get back 20%, are you even? No. If you lose 20%, you got to get back 25% to get back even. And of course, in February and March, if you noted, the Dow was down 35%. It's come back up 47% since then. And is the Dow back to where it was in the beginning of the year? No. Because it has to make back. If it goes to 40, it's got to come back 66. See? The compound, Einstein called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. But it also works negatively. If we're earning compound interest on the way up, it's awesome. But if we go down, we're compounding going down, and that's a kick in the face. And that's the whole point. So that's what happens with losses, which is why so many people that deal specifically with retirement finances, they say, hey, making money's good, but holding on to it is really a lot better. Even if you only get a 5 or 6% rate of return as opposed to getting an 8 or 9, if you can be more certain that you're not going to have huge downturns, you don't have to make back so much when things go wrong. That's that whole concept. Because over time, the market only really averages around 8% anyway. So if you get 6 or 7 with some better certainty, is that maybe better for us? Well, if we're pulling income out, I feel that it often is better. Now, everyone's different, okay? And there are some monies in your portfolios, if you save well, that you're gonna have to go to the next generation anyway. Use the risk with that stuff, not the stuff you need to pull income from. It's a big difference, okay? So that's kind of what that whole story is. And this is what I was saying earlier. What happens if you had just retired and you were pulling money out in February and March, and the market just handed you just a gut shot? What happened if you actually had a 30% loss, and that's when you said, or you looked over at your spouse and say, I'm tapping out, babe. Like, we were gonna retire next year. If this happens, we're not gonna be able to do it. And instead of sticking with it, you pull that money out and you lock into something that gets a 6% return. 6 is great. I don't know anyone who was able to get 6 if they did pull out in February and March. Maybe they could, but if they could, it would take them 6 years just to get back to even. But the average bear, if they had a 30% loss, they only got a 3% return, which is probably more realistic in this current environment. When they went from a stock fund to a bond fund, it's taken 12 years just to get back to where they were in the beginning of the year. That's why we have to have the right plan going into this shit. Because they're not going to give us a heads up when it's going to happen. I mean, right now, there's so much controversial stuff going on with China. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. So again, it doesn't mean be fearful, but it means that when it comes down to income planning, the only thing that can derail retirement is if we don't have proper income that's consistent. We have to have consistency. So we just got to understand when stuff does happen, be prepared for it so that we can know income will still be there. Okay? It's a big deal. So now we've kind of hit through that. This is kind of one of the last pieces that's going to kind of go into the tail end of everything we're going to talk about. So one of the more interesting things about behavioral economics has nothing to do with math. It has to do with how we experience things going on, okay? And if you look at how typically things work, it kind of goes like this, if you think about it. Optimism, all of a sudden the market starts to go up. You bought Amazon at $900. Does anyone know what Amazon is at today? Like $1,700. So if you got it, hit around. What's that?
3,000.
3,000. See? I'll see if anyone's paying attention. That optimism, it starts going up, and all of a sudden now it's at 3,000. That's euphoria, right? But then maybe what happened in that February, March period of time is all of a sudden it gets a little shaky, and then we start getting a little anxious. Woo, maybe I should sell it now. I don't know. I mean, they're still printing money, but that PE ratio is kind of high. Jeff Bezos is kind of a maniacal genius, but I don't know. He's not Midas. He can't turn everything into gold. Maybe you can. But all of a sudden we start riding up, and this is the point of maximum financial risk. And then all of a sudden we get anxious, and then it starts going down, and here's what we start telling ourselves. Deny. Oh, it's just a temporary setback. I'm a long-term investor, it's gonna work out for me. I know exactly what they tell me, buy and hold, Warren Buffett, buy and hold. By the way, what is Warren Buffett's company down this year? Still 16.5%. Berkshire Hathaway is still down 16.5% this year. Denial, then fear, then desperation, then panic, and capitulation, and that's when people say, honey, I'm tapping out. We can't do it. We gotta wait about 3 more years before we retire. I can't have it go to zero. We had 800,000, now we got 543,000, and now the numbers don't work for us to even be able to retire in 2 years, and so I'm tapping out. We'll wait till the waters calm a little bit. It's not gonna work for us this way. Of course, that's about when a lot of people do the same thing: despondency, depression, hope, relief, and then optimism, and then we start to cycle over. So the reason I say this is because this has been studied so many times, from the Dutch tulip crazy thing, to beanie babies, to whatever the heck is going on with Zoom and all this other crap where the PE ratios are hyperbolic. We get companies that have 0 earnings, but there's hope that COVID will make them rich. Tesla, you know? Maybe they can keep going up, but man, it doesn't make some sense when you're looking at the fundamentals. So the question is, where do you guys think we are on this chart? We've been going up for 11 straight years, nearly, pretty close to 11 years on a bull market. You guys think we're over here at all? I would say hell no. I would say we're somewhere in here, and probably here. Because technically, on a lot of the indexes, especially NASDAQ, we're higher today than we were in the beginning of the year. And yet, Microsoft and Apple and Amazon do not have any better profits than they did before the shutdown. So, if we're in this euphoria mode, what happens from here? I don't know, maybe we're not there yet. Maybe we're still in the thrill part. But does that typically mean, and what does this show us? What happens next? We're probably due for a market slide. Are we prepared for it? Because regardless of how our investment philosophy is, regardless of what we're invested in, this is just psychology. We will all experience this. Even if you think that you got intestinal fortitude of a steel tank, you will still experience this. You just have the willpower to not engage yourself to change. The question is, how are we all wired? I'm risk averse by my very nature. I don't gamble. When I go to Vegas, I go see Cirque du Soleil. Or I did, but now they're bankrupt. I used to go watch Siegfried and Roy, but then the Tiger ate one. So I mean, you know, everything that I used to do, we can't do anymore. But I didn't gamble. I love watching people gamble. But I hate losing money. I cannot tolerate losing money. It's a personal thing for me. When I go to the racetrack, I will bet a couple races, but the only bet I make is on Woodford Reserve because I win every time. $9, but I know that I'm getting a payoff. I win, place, and show every time I buy one. I've never hit a trifecta. So that's the idea about how I work. So just to let you know, so where are we? I kind of think we're up in here. Who knows what happens from there? So we're going to talk about market losses, and I'm going to kind of speed things up now because I want to make sure we're getting out of time. But we're going to talk about market losses because this year we had a little bit of a brouhaha, if you will, in the markets. Now, I think that it's the tip of an iceberg. It doesn't mean that we go down. It just means that I think we're going to have a lot more volatility like that. And I want everyone to expect some real fireworks going into the election. Just expect it. I have no idea what's going to happen, but everyone's playing with loaded cannons. And it's just not going to be good. There's just no way this is going to be positive for the American citizens. I really don't think it is, regardless of who ends up winning. It's just not going to be good. So what I want us to do is ready for this. So here is, some of us have kind of forgotten. Here's what it feels like to lose money.
Do I really have to do this, Dad?
Stan, now more than ever, you need to understand the importance of saving money.
Grandma said I could use this money to buy whatever I want.
Okay, next please. Go on, Stanley.
I got a $100 check from my grandma, and my dad said I need to put it in the bank so it can grow over the years.
Well, that's fantastic. A really smart decision, young man. We can put that check in a money market mutual fund. Then we'll reinvest the earnings into foreign currency accounts with compounding interest, and it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
What's all gone?
The money in your account. It didn't do too well. It's gone.
What do you mean? I have $100.
Not anymore, you don't. Poof.
Well, what can I do to get back
I'm
my...
sorry, sir, but this line is for bank members only.
I just opened an account.
Do you have any money invested with this bank?
No, you just lost it all.
Then please stand aside for people who actually have money with us. Next, please.
Hey!
Hello, Mrs. Barnacle. How are you today? Making a deposit, are we? Great. We can just put that into your retirement account and make it go to work for you, and it's gone.
What?
Sorry, yeah, that's gone. Please step aside for people who actually have money with the bank. Next, please.
Dad!
Hey, I'm trying to teach my son the importance of savings. You already lost his money? Oh, Mr. Marsh, but you don't worry. We can just transfer money from your account into a portfolio with your son, and it's gone! This line's for people who have money with the bank only. Please step aside.
What happened in February and March was interesting because it took 19 days to lose 35%. So unlike 2008, which took several months, it happened very quickly. What we learned from that, though, is it can happen very quickly. The reason I think that it's going to be different and why this is so much more important is because imagine if we had a prolonged downturn where every month we were just down on 2 or 3% clip, okay? Because there's longer for that gut reaction, that psychology to kick in and do potentially not very good things to our portfolio or our investment philosophy. So because of that, this is really what most people were experiencing in 2008. It felt like, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter what I do, everything is falling apart. What can we do? And it lasted a little longer. So that's why I say right now, with the Federal Reserve stepping in, it was a little bit of a perversion of the system. We bought ourselves out of that short term. The long-term ramification, we don't yet know what that's going to be. No industrialized nation has done to the level of what we have now done, but the rest of the world is following suit. Germany, Portugal, they're all doing the same thing. They're printing money, whether they have it or not, which means long-term, there's probably going to be a global bubble that will pop. Who knows how long it'll take? It could be 100 years from now. Because right now, as long as they can keep the printing presses going, we're okay. But this concept, the thing that is what happens if it does just take time to unwind? What if this year the market does not go down another 20 or 30 or 40%? What if it just goes down 6 or 7? And let's say that this year or next year is the year you're going to retire, or you're already pulling money from your accounts. And then next year, it goes down another 6 or 7. Now, typically, you could go back and you can go to CDs or bonds, but what are those paying? Probably not the 3 to 4 to 5% we're going to need to live off of. So we know that that's a guaranteed loss situation. What if that happens for several years? That's kind of what happened in the 70s. You know, the market went up and then down and up and then down, but over the course of the 70s, really it made no money whatsoever. Slight losses. And of course, when you put inflation on there, the average loss was around 3.5% a year from basically 1969 to 1981. People forgot that. It's been a while. And not everyone had their money in the market. More people had pensions, different things were happening. And more people had money at the bank, okay? And so now we've kind of changed that, for good or for bad. But that's kind of the issue. Because what we've always been told is this: if it's okay if you lose money, it'll come back, right? We all heard that. We've always heard if you just buy and hold, it's the best way to manage your retirement accounts. We'll have to prove that that's probably not factual at all. We'll figure it out for ourselves. And then if you just have a diversified basket of mutual funds or stocks or bonds, just diversified, that'll protect your accounts against loss. But what did I say at the beginning of today? Where are stocks right now? Close to the all-time high they've ever been. What about bonds? They high or low? Close to as high as they've ever been. What about gold? Pretty dang high. So if everything is high, what happens if you actually just have a real recessionary environment and they all go down? Is that potentially 100% of a potentially diversified portfolio? And so is a diversified portfolio going to fix this time? Not when everything is propped up as high as it is. So what do we do to fix it? That's what we're talking about. So in your folder, you should have a chart that looks a little bit like this. It's not going to have those numbers written on it, but it's going to show the actual graph. I'm going to show you something pretty interesting. Actually, there's one I'm going to hit on before I do that, real quickly. So pull this one out. This is called the Buffett indicator. So this is a really interesting sign. So Warren Buffett always says, well, he's really the one that kind of coined the idea. He got it from Benjamin Graham, who was his professor really back in the day at Columbia. But he said, basically, it's always a good time to buy stocks. You just want to buy and hold. Okay? But here's the idea. But he did say there are some times when you shouldn't buy stocks. Sometimes there may even not be a good time to hold some stocks, depending on. So if we look at this right here, if we look at this number, right now, this is the Buffett indicator. Where are we on this chart? Are we at literally all-time highs? Mm-hmm. Yep. So if we look back, where were we in 2008? Right now we're 144%, which is the cost to buy the 5,000 basically largest companies in the US. So that's basically kind of like all large cap and mid cap and small cap. So basically the entire stock market is kind of what the Wilshire 5,000 is. So when we look at the entire stock market, we're 144% in the cost to buy it versus what we're producing as a country. Now this is before this whole COVID thing. I mean, this is not even including the shutdowns and those real things. So that's a big deal. Look where we were in 2008. We were only at 105. Amazingly enough, the last time we were close to this is when? We were at 136.9. When was that? What happened in 2000? .com bust. So when Mark Cuban came on television last week and said, listen, and he went on ABC. He said, I just want to make everyone aware. Don't run for the hills. But we're approaching valuations that are higher than where we were in the .com bust. And remember, the .com bust didn't last for 2 months like we just had in February and March. The .com lasted for 3 freaking years. It was a 12% punch in the face, and then a 16% punch in the face, and then a 21% punch in the face. And that was the S&P. If you were in the NASDAQ, you lost 80% of your money. If we lose 80, how much do we have to get back to even? A 50% loss is 100%. You gotta come back over 200% from that point in time to get back to even. That's a big deal. We are more expensive than we were then. How do we pull money from a portfolio of balanced mutual funds if we are so expensive to where really, it doesn't have to go down a ton? My goodness, is it expensive. We have to find some alternatives. Okay, so the understanding is this is where I'm starting with first, because now we're gonna hit this. Because amazingly enough, where is it starting? 2000. So in this chart, and this is this one just goes to 2018. This one goes all the way through. What I want you to notice here is here's my question. Because we've always heard, it's okay if you lose money. It'll come back. Your money will come back. Your money will come back. We're about to prove, or we're about to find out together, doing a real exercise with math, if that's true or not. So we started off with 100 grand, and unfortunately it was 2,000. Things were very expensive and crap. It went down for 3 years, okay? So our 100 grand went down to 60,000 bucks. That stunk. That was not very comfortable, but we didn't sell it. We were long-term investors. Warren Buffett, we got a poster of him on our ceiling in our bedroom. Whenever we are about to do something wrong, we just look up at old Warren and say, Warren, what would you do? He says, I just buy and hold. I also drink Coca-Cola about 20 a day. Here I am, I'm 90,000 years old, and I'm still good. That's okay, that's all right. But we listened to that, we paid homage to that, we did it. And that 60 grand, lo and behold, it finally tanked in 2003, and then it started coming back up, boom, 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 boom. So we now have $119,000, and what year was that? 2008? Finally got our money back, and it's 2008. Snap. But did our money come back? The 100,000 went down and went to 119, and we turned 100 to 119. Did we get back? I don't know. Let's look at this again now. So then 119, but we are long-term investors. We are going to buy and hold. This is the S&P. We're going to hold this sucker out, baby. Warren made him rich. Does Warren Buffett own any index fund or mutual funds for that matter? Does Warren Buffett own a single mutual fund? Nope. He doesn't. Everyone that sells Warren Buffett's concept, trying to sell his mutual funds, he doesn't own a damn one. Interesting concept. But the 119, all of a sudden, dang, it was 2008, down to 58 grand. But finally, after 2009, when all of the worst damage had been done, finally, that 58 grand goes all the way up to 187,000 by the end of 2017, going into 2018. And then 187,000 then, today would be worth about 212,000. You need to update this chart. This is what that would have said if this was on the screen, okay? So here's my question. Did our $100,000, did your lost money come back? your lost money did come back, it does appear that way, does it not? But here's the question: if your lost money came back, where's my $60,487 of my lost money came back? Hold on, Joe, what are you talking about? I had 100 grand, it grew to 187,000. What are you talking about, man? I turned 100 to 187,000. Where on earth? Like, what do you mean $60,000? Right. Well, here's my question: if you had 119 and it went down to 58, could you not have just put $58,000 in the market and grown all of that all the way up to 187? You could have, right? But you had 119, so the difference between 119 and 58 is $60,487. If you really got your money back that the market lost, where's your 60 grand? It's gone. We just proved mathematically that lost money never comes back in the stock market. It's gone. And that was just one of the two major dips. They say that because the market often comes back, but lost money never comes back. We didn't even do the difference between the 100,000 and 60 to do it again, right? That is a big deal. So now one of the biggest myths of finance, especially in retirement, because remember, growing money doesn't matter how you get your 8%. When we're pulling money out and lost money never comes back, does it even make sense to have that much risk? Maybe not. Especially if we have to have that money to pull income from. It may not make as much difference. So that lost money never comes back. It's gone forever. Now, does that kind of jar a couple things in this a little bit? Maybe some of that conventional financial wisdom they've been spouting to us may be just a sales pitch so that we give them our money. They charge us a commission on that mutual fund. They make all these interior costs. We keep them, they keep us in it. They earn those fees every year, whether we really make money or not. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it is. And here's what I would say, and here's why it's very interesting. We're going to look at this in a second right now. Right? So markets are very volatile, more volatile than they've ever been before, because we have the entire world participating in markets, right? We have the Fed that's been buying junk bonds. I don't know if I want the Fed owning junk bonds. I don't know long term what that's going to do. I have no idea. But I don't think it sounds good, because I have no idea what that's going to do long term. Buy and hold is not going to be sufficient in volatile markets when we're pulling an income stream. It will not be, because the volatility is what destroys our actual return. You cannot pull money from something that's highly volatile. It will not work. Because if it goes down 10, we got to come back 12 to get back to even. If it goes down 20, we got to come 25, but we're still pulling money out. See how it just comes down and comes back up, and we're pulling money out. It goes down, comes back up, and we're pulling money out. It goes down, comes back up, we're pulling money out. We run out of money. We can't have that kind of volatility. And the point is, in all of this, is what would happen to a balanced portfolio. Did you guys think, and when you kind of remember back about 2000, the dot-com bust in 2008, did you all feel that your all's portfolios were pretty diversified? And you didn't have all of your money just in one stock, did you? Most people didn't. You had some small cap, mid cap, large cap, bonds, cash, CDs, whatever you had. Did that save you in 2000 and 2002? Or did you still have 20, 25, 30, 35% losses? A lot of people did. In 2008, the broad market was down about 56%. But even a balanced portfolio, which we're about to look at right here, even a balanced portfolio, what they typically call a 60-40, right? 60% equities and 40% bonds, that would be balanced for the most part, right? Well, let's see how that sucker did. And this would have been in 2007 to 2019. So this was that dot-com bust, or I'm sorry, this was the 2008, Great Recession. People pretty familiar with Vanguard, right? So here's a Vanguard Target Retirement Fund, 2015. So if this happened in 2008, that means that you were only 7 years away from retirement. We went ahead and put a 2020, someone's a little bit further away. So these are both what they would consider to be very diversified portfolios. In 2008, you were only going to retire 7 years from the time that the downturn happened. You were down 39% maximum drawdown of that Vanguard target date fund. Did that diversification help you out? No, it did not. And if you actually were in that target date 2020 fund, you were down 42%. That's 7 to 13 years away from retirement. Now, 13 is a few years away, but 7 is not that far away. You were down 39%. But let's say that you bought and held. You just held on, okay? We did the right thing. Believe it or not, you were down 39%, but your actual return, that $500,000 you had in there, you only grew your money by 1.53%, getting in 2007 and all the way through December of 2019. Because of that downturn, you had a 40% downturn. You had to come back nearly 67% just to get back to even. And because of that, you actually only earned 1.53% of your money. And this is Vanguard. This is one of the best low-cost available options that any of us could actually consider. Did that save us with diversification? No. Why on earth do we think this time would be any different? It may not be. So this is what I'm saying, buying and holding when we have a lot of volatility is not the direction we want to consider. There are other alternatives we have to understand, okay? And it doesn't mean put our money under the mattress. All right, so we're gonna go through this. Robert Shiller, anyone know who Robert Shiller is? You have one of these, I believe, in your folder too. Robert Shiller won the Nobel Prize. He's a Yale professor. I actually get to meet him at the New York Stock Exchange. One of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. And he won the Nobel Prize for basically this exact research. He's basically created what they call the CAPE Index, basically the Shiller CAPE Index, which basically figures out, are we expensive or are we cheap relative to the amount of money the companies are earning? That sounds like a bunch of whatever, but here's how it typically goes. And this goes all the way back to 1871. 1871. This green line shows the price of investing in the stock market. Basically what it costs to be into the market, quote unquote. That red line shows where we are today. So when we look at it, and here's how I like to typically relate to this, like Macy's. Say we're gonna go buy a pair of pants. Say that my pants didn't fit tonight, and I had to go get a new pair of pants. The green line shows the typical prices of a pair of pants. And the red line shows what it costs today. Historically, if I had to go buy a pair of pants today at Macy's and they were on that red line, is that an expensive time to buy those pants? Kind of is, yeah? As a matter of fact, if we look at that green right there, how many times were we at that green line or higher? 3 total times since 1871. When were the other times we were higher than that red line? What year was that?
1929.
1929. Right here, this was the Clinton administration when we had basically the advent of the internet, essentially. So we had .com going through the roof, we had a good period of peace. For a Democrat, he was pretty darn deregulatory for a lot of those things. I mean, Clinton really did benefit from a lot of those tax cuts that Reagan and Bush put in, but he did it right. He really got things to keep moving in the right direction. You got to give him a lot of benefit for that. But unfortunately, he got a little too wild. And because of that, that's what caused the .com bust that took away 56% of the S&P and 80% of the NASDAQ, okay? And so we were more expensive there, and here we are again. 3 times in history were we at this point in time or higher. And those previous 2 times, huge downturns, and they were sustained. It took 56 years to get back the losses from 1929, and the 2000 debacle, we didn't really get back until 2014. Because the time we got back, we just saw it, $100,000, got to finally 119 in 2007, what happened in 08, took it away. 2014 is when we finally got back to what we lost in 2000. And here we are again. And now Shiller says, wow, we're a little expensive. If things go perfect from here, we would expect to get returns in the stock market of around 2.9% a year. That would be the maximum based on how much we're paying for that pair of pants right now. Now, what could fix that? What could make this higher? What would we need to have happen for that to be a 7 or an 8% number, which is what we would really like to see, right? We'd like to have the opportunity to get 7 or 8% if we're going to invest in the stock market. What would have to happen for that to be the case? prices would have to come down, which means what? A market correction.
Well,
We have-
corporate earnings.
You could have higher corporate earnings, or we could have a 30 or 40% correction. In which case, then the pair of pants would be priced right, and then from there, we could realistically see 7 or 8 or 9% right there, right? So, is this a good time to buy a pair of pants? Maybe, maybe not. Okay? So Schiller won the Nobel Prize for this. This is the research that he had done, but he had not got it into a book form. It was finally released in December of 2007. He'd done the research, it was all prepared, all the way to 2005 it was prepared, but he didn't get it to publisher until the end of 2007. And what happened in 2008? He could not get the warning sign out fast enough. So now that we know that, now that we're seeing the tea leaves aren't exactly the way they were there, but the tea leaves are pretty real. It's pretty interesting, okay? So are we going to be rewarded for the risk we're currently taking in the market? If from here, the market may only give us 2 or 3% returns, is it worth the risk we're currently taking? For some of us, it may be worth the risk. For others, you may be like, wow, for 3%, I don't know if I want that much risk. Maybe I want to descale that risk, or pull it off the table, or restructure my portfolio so that I'm just more comfortable. Look for those opportunities later when things do go down in price, and maybe do some risk arbitrage. Okay? Maybe that's what people would consider doing. Everyone's going to be different. Whatever we decide to do is going to be different. Okay? So, we're going to go through this. So, the concept that we really want to do long term is we want to understand this concept takes too long. You're going to get, here we go. You're going to end up getting a series of 5 videos after this course. I do recommend watching them. They are much more in depth than what I can cover here in a few hours. But they're going to cut through 5 different subject matters of what we discussed tonight with more depth. But here's the amazing thing, and I want you to pull this chart back out, the same one that was here with the chart. Okay? Now I'm going to draw your attention to something very different. Now, buy and hold is one way to manage money. Historically, it's been fine for growing money, but when you're pulling money out by distributing it, it has a potentially very detrimental cost to us. The other way to do it, the way that hedge funds often do it, the way that pension funds do it, is using tactical approaches. Tactical simply means one thing. You have a system of mathematics that tells you should you take the risk or not. That's it. Now we're looking at the exact same chart we saw earlier, but now I'm going to draw your attention to simply 2 things. Red lines and green lines. And on this, red lines and green lines. The amazing thing is that instead of buying and holding, what if you used a tactical approach that simply said, when things are very risky, the red line goes in, and you just remove a good portion of risk from your portfolio. Why? Because maybe you're in the middle of rush hour in LA, and you're trying to cross a freeway, and it's dark and rainy. It's not a good time to cross that street. Other times, maybe you're just out there in the middle of the country and there's no cars coming, haven't been a car in 2 days, and you just gotta get across the road, right? One of them has a lot more risk than the other. So basically the red line means, red means, when you're talking about brake lights, red means what? Stop or go? Stop. What does green mean? Go. So now we're gonna simply do one thing, tactical approaches. On this chart, we call this the 3 wise men. At the top is relative strength, which basically means momentum. Are things going good or things going bad? This is relative strength. This is the first of the 3 wise men. So at the top, it's very interesting. Whenever we've been in the green, it means things are kind of frothy. Things that maybe be a little expensive. Maybe we should worry because things are up a little high. By itself, it means nothing, but it's the first of the 3 wise men, okay? The second graph here, where we see the blue line and whatever color that is, magenta, fuchsia, whatever color, it should be red, but our interns screwed that up. Anyway, so whatever this is, so this is the second. This is called moving averages. Typically use a 50 and a 200-day moving average, okay? So that's the second of the wise men. And the third one is not on this chart because I couldn't fit it on. The second one is down here. That's called MACD, moving averages, convergence, divergence. Now listen, that has got really nerd and geeky for you. But hell, I went to Cornell and studied mathematical shit. So I gotta tell you, I know some stuff. So the point is that if you use those 3 wise men, What did the three wise men do? They saw a sign, they all saw the sign, and they followed that sign. Had only two of the three wise men seen that sign, would they have gone that way? Probably not. All three of them saw a sign and they moved that direction. So simply, when all three of those tell us, are things expensive or are they cheap? Wise man number one. Wise man number two says, hey, are our moving averages, are they getting better? Are companies making more money? Or are they making less money? And MACD, which is down here, MACD says, is this an appropriate time to make a bet? When all of them go red, get out of the market, or get out of whatever this is. This is just the S&P. You can do this with anything. UPS stock makes no difference. GE, doesn't matter. Anything you want. When those three see a sign, you follow it. So if you had done that, amazingly enough, in 2000, well, at the beginning of 2000, that red line came in. Why? We've been kind of frothy. The moving averages changed and our MACD converged. All three wise men say, it's a little risky. And had we done that, what did we miss out on? 3 years of losing money. Did it get back in at the very bottom? No. But all of a sudden, now things were cheap. They're starting to move back up. The moving averages, the blue line finally went back over the red line, and then down here we saw the red line, the black line went above the red. All three wise men see the sign. What do they say? Green. Green means go. Now is an appropriate time to maybe take some risk in this. Amazingly enough, had you just known to do those things from 2000 to 2018 here, during that period of time, the worst annual year just investing in the S&P, in 2008, you would have been down only 2.49%. Amazingly enough, had you just done that, and this is not diversified, is it? This is only using the S&P. And when you're red, it just says you're just going to cash. It doesn't say you go to bonds or gold. This is the most simplistic design ever. It's just straight cash. If you had done that, a minute ago, remember we had 187,000? Your worst year would have only been 2.49. You would have had $386,000, understanding just the three wise men and only using the S&P. Is that diversified? Nope. But does diversification save us last time? Nope. Could you pull a portfolio? Could you pull money out of a portfolio if the worst year is only down 2.5%? Yep. And would you freak out and basically divorce your spouse if you lost only 2.5% in any given year? And that was 2008? Nope. Now I want you to look at this chart one last time because this is the current one. What line are we on right now? Really? Okay. So the idea is that what should we want to do as investors? We want to do what's been sold to us, buy and hold and potentially go up and down and not know, even if we get an 8% return, if we can pull out 5 or not, or do we want to learn what the smartest people out there do? Where did we learn this? By studying the Harvard, Yale, MIT, and Northwest endowments. Because just like retirees, endowments have to do the same thing. Whether they make or lose money that year, they have to spend it. They have to spend money every year. They have to pay professors, they gotta strike the football field, they gotta get scholarships, they gotta do all those things. And so just like retirees, we wanna spend money to live off of, but they have to be more conservative. They won't be able to spend that money. So just like endowments, that's why this modeling is so attractive for retirees. This is what I spent a long time learning. And this is potentially one of the biggest game changers for people. This allows them to do the right thing for themselves using simple metrics, and you can do it on your own at Vanguard if you want. That's the whole concept. This is simply using one thing. Could you add better performance if you do use a little bit of diversification? Yes. By using a couple more indicators as opposed to just 3, can you get slightly better improvements? Yes.
Why is it there's more publicized?
Because it's proprietary to endowments, and since I studied at Cornell and my mentor runs a $6 billion hedge fund in New York, I have access to it.
What 3 schools was that?
Well, the biggest 3, David Swinson runs the Yale Endowment, the Harvard Endowment, and then MIT. Those are the ones that primarily utilize this concept. And really, they're only making maneuvers once a month. You only look at it monthly, which means every month, every 30 days, you're making a decision. Is it an appropriate time to stay in, or is this not an appropriate time to have the risk? It's
So
not
you
that.
go to 100% cash then? At the
This,
red line?
no, again, this is just a simple modeling showing you that this red means cash. Every individual can make this what they choose. You can make it gold, you can make it bonds, you can make it CDs, you can make it money market. Okay? Green, this is just the S&P. You could also run this against the NASDAQ. You could run against the Dow. You could run against the Russell 2000. It makes no difference. The concept is the three wise men are very clean. You typically want to use an index that has a lot of volume, so that you can know you can place a trade and you can have it executed at the right time. But this is simplistic. This is very easy. But this is tactical investing. By the way, I'm not teaching you how to do this. I'm showing you that tactical is a lot better than buy and hold when we're retiring. Because now we don't have to worry about as much of the loss provisions, right? What happens if equities are really expensive? This would potentially help us remove ourselves from harm's way. What if bonds are really expensive? Is there any bonds in this? What if gold's really expensive? Is there any gold in this one right now? But what if you had different portions of your portfolio where you ran this against all three of those, or maybe even 7 things? Could that work? That's tactical. So the concept of all this is, at the end of the day, what I wanted to make sure we understood was, and where I want everyone to gravitate to, when we're spending money in retirement, or preparing to be able to spend money in retirement, these are things not taught because it's not being sold. You buy a mutual fund, it's being sold to you. You buy an annuity, it's being sold to you. This is typical fundamental approaches, which is why the lab that I'm offering as part of this course, because the American Retirement Institute wants me to do that, applies this theory to your actual numbers. And you can find out if that's even appropriate for you or not. I'll show you how to do it at Vanguard on your own. You can't hire me from this course anyway. So the concept is that can you do a better job? Mostly, if you have mostly mutual funds, you can beat the pants out of a mutual fund-based portfolio, if nothing else from fee reduction, and making sure that you actually have money in the right places. International has been a dog for 3 years. And if you have a model that requires you to have international, you have sucked in your international companies for 3 years. Why do you have it? Because it's diversified, it's stupid, and it's archaic, and it's not what endowments do. And if you look at who David Swinson is, he has obliterated the performance of the S&P with about 1/3 of the risk. So who should we really be studying? Warren Buffett or the smart guys? Smart guys. Smart guys always win. Nerds always end up with the girls, man. Yes, sir.
John, so you're contrary to popular, what has always been preached to us is you're saying we can time the market. Where it's
can't
always
time-
been crammed down your throat, don't time the market.
Yeah, but they want to do that because you rely on them to buy the shit.
Right. But that's been
We can
preached
absolutely time the market. If you ask 1,000 people that live in the United States and have skin in the game, if today is a really good or a bad time to be actively in the market right now, the predominant amount of people would say, "Nah, it's a little freaky, I don't know." So why the hell are they telling us to stay in it when everything's at all-time highs? I've just already proven you the real numbers. We're on a red line. We're higher than we were in 2000. Mark Cuban's even come out and said, "Oh crap, hey, let's just be careful. I'm not giving you financial advice. I get sued for that, but I am telling you, I'm going to retire in the next 3 years. I don't have a whole bunch of crazy risk right now, right?" So there's the writings on the walls. And the question is that if you guys don't make it in retirement, who's going to have to pay for you? Me. They're going to take my tax dollars. So I'm not 100% altruistic. I need you guys to not suck it up. Okay? So there's a lot of truth to what I'm telling you because it's very true. Does this mean you're going to outperform the market? No. Is it going to mean, though, that you can reduce your risk factors when it's dumb to take risk? Yes. And what does that allow you to do? Sleep at night and spend your monthly money. That's what retirement's about. This is not a trading philosophy. This is not a trading strategy. This is understanding that contrary to all conventional financial wisdom, it's all been sold to us. From putting it in tax-deferred accounts because it's going to be better for us, we proved that that's a fallacy. To just buy and hold, we just proved that it did not help us in 2008 or 2000 and 2002. Those Vanguard funds sucked. And those are good companies. I love Vanguard. We use a ton of Vanguard in our office. But does it mean just buy it and hold it forever? Nope. No, it's not. Okay? When the red line's on, red means stop. Just hold up. Pump the brakes just a second. It may be a better time to enter later. So when we looked at Schiller and Schiller said, hey, at best, we might get 2.9% out of our money. Is it worth a 30, 40, 50% downturn from here to get 2.9%? No. I do not think it is. Does that mean you put all of your money out of the market? No, it's all personal. You gotta do your math. You gotta figure out what you have to achieve. Because you can regress these models to get exactly where you want it. Take the appropriate amount of risk at any point in time and make it what you want. You're gonna have to go to school for a lot longer than 2 or 3 hours we just spent tonight, right? But it's out there, it's available, it's real. And if this is above your pay grade, consider, what do you need to do next? The answer is, take the lab. Find out what your numbers tell you, and figure out where you go from there. That'd be the idea. Yes, sir.
John, what makes one of those red lines or green lines come down on your graph there?
Yep.
That's when all three.
All three.
Same one.
Absolutely. You have to have relative strength that are moving up, at the same time that moving averages are expanding, at the same time MACD is positive. All three Wiseman are going positive, which would be a green line. If we're seeing downward momentum, which means, hey, maybe this is starting to fizzle, at the same time moving averages are starting to retract, at the same time MACD goes negative, that's a red line.
And once you get one of those lines.
You stay in there until it changes. You do whatever it says. If it's green, you stay
So that
green.
indicates, okay, that's what you should do.
Yep.
On that risk reward.
Yep.
And then you stay there until you get another red, or the other color.
Exactly. Yeah. And so look at it. From 2000 and 2000 and almost 19, how many times did we change? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 19 years? You're averaging only a change once every other year. Come on. It almost is buy and hold. It's just not dumb and hold. Right? So the whole thing is it's not always exactly right. But it saved you 33% downturn there. But then you got 32 there. It was false positive, false negative here. You lost it on 5%. But then you made another 11, but you missed out on a 38% downturn, right? And the point is that then you get a whole bunch of gains here. And right now, what color line are we on? Halt the buggy. Halt the buggy. Okay? So this is to understand that most of the things that we've been told may not work for your old retirement. You guys were guinea pigs in the first place. Baby boomers were guinea pigs. They took away your pensions because corporations wanted better profits and they didn't want to have to pay people that didn't work there anymore. So when they invented the 401k, it was to exploit a loophole. So they didn't have to pay in for you guys anymore. If you put money in, they'd match. Man, that's the greatest deal ever for corporations. Which is why, again, another reason why from the 80s, we saw stock prices go through the roof. But you're also the guinea pigs in the fact that there is not enough money to pay for Social Security. Pensions aren't what they used to be, and the market may not give us the 7 or 8 or 9% returns that we thought we were going to get forever. We got to fix it. We got to know how, which means we cannot do better unless we know better. So now that we hopefully have opened your eyes, taxes are going to be a huge piece of the puzzle. This is the second piece of the puzzle. The stuff that we've been sold was literally that, sold to us. It does not make it correct. Okay? Can't sue Vanguard because the indexes didn't make what you wanted. Yep. So the whole point is that we're more volatile than we've ever been, and if we want to pull income, that volatility will destroy our proposition making. We can do better, but we have to understand tactical approaches. Have to. Okay? So this is the biggest point of the night, and understanding that nothing that I ever teach up here is perfect for everyone, which is why I leave it open. Which is also why I say you guys can do anything you want with your money. It's yours. If you want me to run the numbers for you, we'll do that. And you can see them. You cannot hire me from that. So the whole concept is if you can do it on your own, go do it. I'm also not going to hold your hand and do it for you. Okay? So big boys, big girls, do it yourself means do it your damn self. But if you can hire someone else that you want to use, you need to find out, or if you have someone else, you got to find out, are they the right fit? If they don't understand this, my question is, can they even help you do the one thing we're trying to figure out? Make sure your money doesn't expire before you do. Because I don't think the Vanguard can fix that by themselves, to be perfectly honest. Okay? So we gotta do better. We gotta do better. All right, that's pretty much it tonight. I'm not gonna hit on fees. You'll get a video on that. Fees are important, but that's what everyone focuses on. That is about the fourth most important thing. Number one, where are your buckets of money? Are they in taxable accounts or tax-free? We know which one you probably should be gravitating to. If we don't have the proper safety metrics on our accounts, that can be a problem. And if we do not have tactical approaches, my only question is, quoi? Which means in French, why? Why not? Why not? Okay? So it's very important. So, any questions for me? Nope. We do? Yes, sir.
You're talking about pension, if you have a pension, but you know, you can liquidate your pension and roll it into a 401k.
There you go. So if you have a pension option, you always run the math. If they're giving you a juicy option that you cannot get on your own, you need to consider taking that. You still want to put in the math, though, that you're never going to get your Social Security tax-free. I've seen some pensions that are so juicy, they're giving 6 and 7% annual payouts. That is unachievable in any other part of the market right now. If you did your own annuity, if you did anything, you cannot achieve that with certainty. If it's an insolvent pension, you got to wonder about that.
Right,
but if they give you the option, you always run the math. If it's going to be a juicy option, you have to take it. If you want more flexibility and control, then that's usually the better way to do it. If they're not going to at least give you a factor of 3.9 to 4%, you can always do better than that. So that's an important thing to say. But factors are how they do it. Some companies will internalize that. Some of them will just sell it off to an annuity company. And like I said, interest rates suck now, so we're not going to get good rates. So if someone has a lump sum option, I really want you to think about that, but you have to run the math. You just never make a blanket statement of always cash it out or always take it. It requires math. Yeah. But yeah, but if you do put it and roll it into a fund, you absolutely can get that to a Roth over time, which I think is very wise.
I mean, if you have a little old frozen pension over here that's just sitting there, you know.
Yep. Any other questions?
What were you talking about a lab?
I'm sorry?
What did you say about a lab?
Yeah, so so basically in your folder, you're gonna have like a little thing about information. So if you fill that out and provide us that information, you can do your lab. It's completely optional. You do it if you want, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna take your actual financials and put them through this ringer with this theory, and you're gonna find out how much should you potentially go to a Roth with, how much should you potentially move annually, does it make sense for you to do that, or mathematically will it not benefit you from doing that at all? That's the tax portion. Then you're gonna see how much risk you currently have in your portfolio, and if it can sustain the income that you might need in retirement, okay? And after that piece, you're gonna find out if you did do tactical, would it add or reduce the value that you currently have based on risk factors? But you're gonna know. And then you can make any decision you choose to make. And I'll give that to you, okay? But that's what part of this is. Theory is great for a minute, but it's when you apply. Remember, knowledge is not power, it's the application of the right knowledge that is powerful. That's what I want you to get, okay? That's important. Yeah, but if you fill out that form, just let Denise know. Denise, it's first come, first serve in my office. I'm doing a very limited amount right now because of COVID and all that kind of stuff. And if I've ever done one for you in the past, we'll probably have to do that through a Zoom type conversation just because it's just how it goes right now with everything else. But if you choose to do that, just let Denise know and she'll get you guys on the calendar for whenever you guys get me the information. I have to have that information before you can come in, because my time, I get nothing from this. This is part of the national organization. I just gotta make sure that we get the information as best to people as we can.
Thanks, John.
Awesome, appreciate it.